Well, the big orange meanie has struck again.
Today, I'm instructing my administration to halt funding of the World Health Organization while a review is conducted to assess the World Health Organization's role in severely mismanaging and covering up the spread of the coronavirus. Had the WHO done its job to get medical experts into China to objectively assess the situation on the ground and to call out China's lack of transparency, the outbreak could have been contained at its source with very little death.
And as if on cue, the media spewed.
This is an attempt by the president to steer you away from his own actions.
If you go through the scapegoats that he's blamed so far for this coronavirus pandemic, the WHO, members of the news media, Democrats in Congress.
What you're seeing is a president who deflects, demeans, and denounces others as opposed to taking responsibility.
If I had to sum it up, I would say sheer madness. It's obscene. It's strictly political.
What he's accusing the WHO of, he did even worse.
Madness, obscene. It's a reaction we've come to expect from the children in the room, none of whom cared much about the pandemic because they were too busy smoking the crack pipe of impeachment. But are you surprised by Trump's actions? Are you like the media in which every day is the first day of Trump's presidency? No, you get it. Trump's strategy from day one is based on incentives. He asks, how can we expect the WHO to do better if they're going to get our millions anyway? The WHO is like everything in Trump's orbit. He's going to kick its tires, demand oversight, threaten to pull out. Nothing is off limits, especially an organization notorious for abuse. Trump just spanked its leadership, who spent lavishly on travel just so they could be China's mouthpiece. If their house ain't in order, why are we paying their rent? You know, it's a good question, one the media won't ask. Of course, they pretend that this is the end of the process when it's really just the start. Trump shakes the box to see what happens next. It's not new, but it works, which is why yesterday Obama spent 12 minutes saying nothing. To defend Joe, it all hinged on personality. Yeah, Trump's mean, but Joe's nice, unless your name is Tara. Problem with Barack's defense? The proof. Did the stock market crash when Trump reamed Acosta? Did unemployment rise when Trump invented a nickname? No, all Obama had was a complaint that's as gray as he is. Yeah, we get it. Mr. Trump is mean, but he's mean on our behalf. And the media implodes because Trump dares to demand competence for people soaking us for millions. I guess if it were Biden, Mr. Nice Guy would have just sniffed their hair and called it a day. You know, Dana, I like to offer solutions when there are problems. And if you notice what President Trump said, he said suspended while a review is being performed. So this is the beginning of a process to find a solution, which I would think would be to fund directly so we can watch the money, let our State Department administer the health funds directly in country so we can see what's going on, more transparency, right?
I think that's probably right, that at the end of this process, when it's finished, that you will basically have the United States, I think still probably paying the lion's share, but also then utilizing the influence that comes with that we are the superpower and we should act like it. So therefore, we're going to be here and there's going to be a minder and there's a United States person that's going to be involved. And I think there are some good things that the WHO does for developing countries in particular. And when an outbreak like Ebola happens, like, it's really important that somebody is on the scene to be able to help to try to stamp that down, because more failed states is not good for anybody in the world. So there's that. But when it comes to protecting our own health, if we're going to pay for the money, then we should be able to get something for it. I don't think that it will all go away unless there's complete and total resistance. You know, if the WHO decides that it just wants to thumb its nose at America, then you might see America pull its funding out. And at that point, it would probably be the right thing to do.
Yeah, you know, Kennedy, I think it was 2018, they spent over $200 million on travel expenses. And meanwhile, they were having, they were having issues with Ebola. You know, they were having shortfalls. They couldn't get the money. What do you make of this?
I always think it's a good idea to take a look at these massive expenditures, figure out where the money's going, figure out some transparency and accountability. I don't have a problem with that. If the WHO is spending so much money on transportation and travel, why didn't they go to China with a group of international experts, including epidemiologists from the United States, and really figure out the origin of this virus? Because there are so many unanswered questions, and I really don't think now is the time to defend or appease China. And I don't mind if we take politicization out of the entire picture, but I don't have a problem with asking these important questions. And I think we should do that with every government body who has dropped the ball in some area, whether it's the federal government on the state level or these massive international conglomerates that at this point are doing a little more harm than good.
Mm-hmm. Juan, do you think that the WHO is the victim in this, and we're politicizing this story, and it seems like the media immediately, whenever Trump doesn't like something, the media always likes the thing he doesn't like, and when he likes something, they always take the opposition. So isn't that kind of what's going on here?
No, but I mean, I'll just take the media out of it for a second, Greg. I just think you can have two realities. One is I think China lies a lot and lied about this virus, and the president is right when he calls them out. I wish he would do it more. But secondly, that the WHO takes a lot on face value and tries to work with these governments that maintain or retain their sovereignty. So they need them to cooperate in order for the WHO to do their job. So you have these two conflicting realities. So I think the president is right to say, hey, why doesn't China stop lying? I think he should, instead of lashing out at WHO, lash out at China. But I think right now to do what he's doing in the midst of a global pandemic is a little bit like cutting off your nose to spite your face. We don't even have a replacement. Nobody in the world level is in the position of the WHO to help us deal with this crisis at the moment. We can't, as the United States, stop it unless we deal with the developing countries and even with China again, because right now I understand they may be facing a second wave in that country. Mm-hmm. So all of that is important. And I think in terms of the politics of it, apart from the president putting his signature on stimulus checks, it is like he's trying to distract us from all the critics who say he's had some problems in terms of his response.
What do you think, Jesse? Do you think that's the case?
Well, no. To Juan's point, the WHO is there to prevent pandemics, and they blew it. So that's over. They're useless now. They're not there to cure pandemics. They're there to prevent, and they failed. Let me just show you a snapshot of the WHO. It's rotten from the top. The chairman, Dr. Tedros, do you know who he actually gave a goodwill ambassadorship to? Robert Mugabe of Zimbabwe. The backlash was so strong, he had to rescind it. This guy is from the Marxist Revolutionary Party in Ethiopia. He was part of a regime there that had really brutal crackdowns, human rights atrocities galore. This $200 million they spent in 1 year on travel is more than they spent fighting malaria, AIDS, and tuberculosis combined. They were booking presidential suites with marble bathrooms. They were doing first-class air. They were doing luxury limousines. So now you have this slush fund run by a Marxist, basically an American expense account, and it's under the UN umbrella. Must I remind everybody about the United Nations? I mean, this is like for Arab dictatorships, European socialists, third world wannabes, and they're all just trying to take down America. It's a patronage mill, and we pay for that patronage mill. And oil for food, the rape scandals in Africa. I mean, they predicted Manhattan would be underwater last year. This whole WHO, UN scene is a bad scene. They have a lot of meetings and they never do anything. We got to make sure we get it right.
I think you summed it up perfectly.